what he hasn't done is put any that we know of, put any conditions on President Putin coming to the meeting. It's a sort of unconditional listen to what he's got to say face to face.
It is time for the Trump dump. We cross the pond to get the very latest news coming out of Washington. And I'm delighted to say with us now is David Charter, the assistant US editor of The Times. David, hello.
Hello from Washington, D.C.
There's so much for us to talk about. I'd like to start with the president's, he described it as crackdown on crime and homelessness in Washington. We got news of this about 24 hours ago, saying he was going to deploy the National Guard in the Capitol. Caroline Levitt made clear there was more to come.
This is only the beginning. Over the course of the next month, the Trump administration will relentlessly pursue and arrest every violent criminal in the district who breaks the law, undermines public safety, and endangers law-abiding Americans. President Trump will not be deterred by soft-on-crime Democrats and media activists who refuse to acknowledge this rampant violence on our streets. He is going to make our nation's capital the most beautiful and safe city on earth, just as he promised on the campaign trail.
David, what's going on here? Is this a real legitimate concern about the policing of Washington, D.C., or a grand PR exercise?
There's actually a long-standing bee in the bonnet of President Trump. I mean, he said during the election campaign that he had plans to federalize the District of Columbia. And that means it's not a state, as you know, it's a particular area of America that's under its own government with a mayor, but it doesn't have the full independence and autonomy of a US state. And its budget, for example, has to be signed off by Congress, as do a lot of other things that it does. So it's already in a halfway house position and feels it's got one hand tied behind its back whenever it tries to do something major anyway, like big infrastructure or projects like that. And President Trump's actually been able to take advantage of that because there's a home rule bill or home rule act that was passed a few decades ago to give more autonomy to the district. But in that, there were allowances for the federal government to take control of the security if necessary, only on a short-term basis. So this allows Trump to put his own people in charge of the police and to federalize the National Guard for up to 30 days. So it does seem like this could be a short-term experiment to see whether the crime levels, which are fairly high, but as a lot of people have pointed out, have been falling in the last couple of years, are ameliorated by putting the National Guard on the streets alongside the local Metropolitan Police, which we're told is going to start happening from tonight.
David, I wondered, this is your home. Do you sort of agree with the president's assessment of what it is like to live there? That there's a sort of a public safety emergency because of the lawlessness on the street?
Well, there are some very worrying violent crimes that take place in Washington, D.C. I suppose that's no different to any other large American city in that sense. It's not in the top 20 most dangerous, but it does have pretty high murder rates. 187 murders in 2024, and within hours of Trump's announcement yesterday, somebody was shot dead in an area not far away from me. That was the 100th murder of the year in Washington, D.C., which is an area that only has a population of about 750,000 people. So we do hear about carjackings and gunpoint robberies fairly frequently in Washington, D.C., but I'm told that's not surprising in a large American city. So I think what it's more about is that Trump has long had this desire to take over the security of the Capitol and, in his words, clean it up. You may recall just the other day he posted about seeing homeless encampments on the way to his golf club in Virginia nearby that he wants to sweep away. We're not sure what he wants to do with the homeless people, but it's all part of his plan to beautify Washington, D.C. so that it makes it a more inviting place. Having said that, I think the local authorities, the people who have been elected in Washington, D.C. to run its services are in uproar about what was called Liberation Day for the capital, but which they refer to as Subjugation Day because of the impending arrival of troops on the street.
I wonder what the political reaction's been and whether people feel as though this is the president ever so slightly testing the limits of presidential power.
I think there's a strong element of that because he's got more ability to do it in the District of Columbia than anywhere else in America. And we know he tried in Los Angeles. He federalized the National Guard and sent 700 Marines to Los Angeles because the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, known as ICE, was getting harassed and running into protesters when it was trying to arrest immigrants, just seize immigrants off the street. That's why they sent the Marines into Los Angeles, but that really petered out because there wasn't an awful lot of protesting going on, to be honest. There was one or two demonstrations over a few nights, and that was seen that is also being challenged in court. Actually, there's a court case going on at the moment about whether Trump exceeded his constitutional powers there, because, as I say, California is a state. It has a lot more rights of autonomy that the district doesn't have. So it is being seen as a test bed. And I think what Trump wants to be able to say at the end of 30 days is that there was a noticeable improvement in the security situation and use it as the basis for what we've been told is setting up a whole new military branch of the military to send into other cities.
We should talk about the other big significant international development, really, that we heard from Caroline Leavitt in that press briefing that she gave now a few hours ago. The future security of Ukraine. We've got this meeting between, of course, President Trump and President Putin in Alaska on Friday. It'll be the first time the Russian leader has stepped foot on US soil since 2015. Well, the White House press secretary sort of slightly downplayed the meeting. She referred to it as a listening exercise.
This is a listening exercise for the president. Look, only one party that's involved in this war is going to be present. And so this is for the president to go and to get, again, a more firm and better understanding of how we can hopefully bring this war to an end. And the president said at this podium yesterday when he joined all of you in the room that he hopes in the future there can be a trilateral meeting with these three leaders to finally bring this conflict to an end. But this administration has really used every lever, has taken every measure to achieve peace through a diplomatic solution.
I wonder what your sense was, David, listening to that. It was a sort of watered down version of what we heard yesterday, a bit of a management of expectations ahead of Friday.
Yeah, I would say that's how I felt. It was a very even-handed presentation from Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, that seemed to me to be lowering expectations, but also trying to take some of the heat out of this really it's not unprecedented because obviously the two presidents have met one-on-one before, but she simultaneously announced that they would be meeting one-on-one again. So again, it sets a lot of hairs running about just what is going to go on in the room between President Trump and President Putin when it's just the two of them with translators, but that's it. There'll be nobody else in the room. And we know that happened in Helsinki in 2018. And we almost haven't heard the last of it because of the speculation about what was discussed, because there's no record of it, no public record anyway. So I think she wanted to take, as I say, some of the heat out of the build-up because clearly President Zelensky has also been speaking today and warning that it's unacceptable that any trade of land for a ceasefire, especially handing control to Russia of land it just doesn't even occupy at the moment after its invasion, is utterly unacceptable to him. So given that there's all of this discussion about a land swapping, which Trump himself got going, he said that there was going to have to be some land swapping going on. I think Caroline Levitt wanted to just calm things down a little bit today, but it's going to be impossible, isn't it, to calm down the sort of feverish speculation about what's going to come out of it.
Yeah, and there's been quite a short time frame to establish what the objectives of the meeting are. They get face to face, and Donald Trump keeps talking about, and Caroline Levitt echoed that again today, that there's something she's hinting at about Donald Trump's skill in being able to assess the body language when they can actually be in a room together and see each other rather than over the phone. First of all, what do you think she means by that? And second of all, what actually would make this meeting, in terms of the US president's eyes, a success on Friday?
Well, Trump has talked about getting an immediate ceasefire, and that would certainly be a success if there was a way of doing that was acceptable also to Ukraine. But what he hasn't done is put any, that we know of, put any conditions on President Putin coming to the meeting. It's a sort of unconditional listen to what he's got to say face to face. And why doesn't Trump want to do that over the phone? Well, he's just going to be in the room on his own with him. Will they talk business and trade and the rehabilitation of Russia in the international community? Well, possibly, but again, Caroline Levitt today wanted to play that down. She said the main focus was going to be achieving peace in Ukraine because of President Trump's record of bringing warring parties together. And he definitely wants to announce that there will be a follow-up that involves President Zelensky talking with Putin and possibly himself, a trilateral meeting. There was also a suggestion from Caroline Levitt that a second summit is in the offing. Because yesterday, very strangely, Trump twice, I think, said that I'm going to Russia to see President Putin. And he was asked today, was that a slip of the tongue? You know, Alaska is part of America, even though it was bought from Russia in 1867. Well, Caroline Levitt said, perhaps there could be another meeting in Russia. So there's all sorts of possibilities. I think I've spoken to a former US ambassador to Ukraine who thinks there are, very briefly, three main outcomes. One is that Trump walks away, which he doesn't think is likely. One is that they agree a complete peace deal themselves and try and impose it, which again, he thought it was not that likely. And the third outcome was that they agree to talk further. And then I'd spoken to this guy before Caroline Levitt's talked up the possibility of a second summit. So the way that it's being seen is that Putin is getting a win because all the while they keep talking, Trump's deadline for imposing severe tariffs and sanctions on Russia is basically parked.
Yeah,
and
gets knocked back.
Russia escapes that, yeah.
Exactly. David, thank you so much for your time and your analysis and what has been a very big week with lots of scrutiny on every word really uttered by the US president and, of course, his press secretary, Caroline Levitt. Thank you very much. David Charter, the assistant US editor at The Times.